All right, let's talk about an invention that didn't just change the world. It literally built a new one from the ground up. This is the story of how some simple pieces of metal, a little bit of ink, and a stack of paper kicked off revolutions in thinking, in faith, and even in who we are. Let's dive in.
I want you to just try and picture this. A world where one single book, just one, could cost you the same as an entire farm. I mean, that's just wild, right? But that was the reality before the 1450s. Knowledge wasn't just valuable, it was a luxury item, a treasure locked away from pretty much everyone.
So to really get a feel for how massive this revolution was, we first have to understand the world it completely turned upside down. We're talking about the handwritten world, a time when knowledge was, and this is no exaggeration, kept under lock and key.
Just think about the reality of it. Every single book had to be painstakingly copied by hand, one letter at a time. This made them unbelievably slow to create and, you guessed it, outrageously expensive. And even worse, every time a new copy was made, new human errors would creep in. A little mistake here, a changed word there. It meant that no two books were ever exactly the same. And the result of all this? Ideas moved at a snail's pace, and they rarely ever made it out of their own little local bubbles.
Yeah, this whole system was just crying out for a solution. And in the middle of the 15th century, one finally showed up. This is where Johannes Gutenberg steps onto the stage with his movable type revolution, the machine that was about to change absolutely everything.
So what was this game-changing tech? Well, it's one of those things that's deceptively simple but completely brilliant. You basically had these tiny individual metal letters that you could arrange to spell out whatever you wanted. You'd ink them up, press them onto paper, but here's the real magic. You could do it again and again and again, churning out hundreds, even thousands of perfectly identical copies.
And the very first big demonstration of this new technology? Wow, it was a showstopper. The Gutenberg Bible, which was finished around 1456, proved to the entire world that you could create beautiful, high-quality, and completely uniform texts on a massive scale. It was, for all intents and purposes, the dawn of a new information age.
And the scale of this change was just breathtaking. Just look at this number, 40,000. And that's not 40,000 books, that's 40,000 different book titles that were printed in just the first 50 years of the press. This wasn't just an improvement, it was an information explosion. A total big bang.
So let's just lay out the before and after here. You go from hand-copied to machine-pressed, from incredibly high cost to much lower, more accessible prices, from painstakingly slow to rapid mass production. But honestly, the two biggest game changers are right there at the bottom: consistency and reach. For the very first time in human history, ideas could be shared perfectly, without errors, across international borders.
Okay, so we've got this incredible new machine. So what? What did it actually do to the world? Well, the very first major ripple effect was that the press became the superhighway for the Renaissance, spreading all these new humanist ideas far beyond Italy.
And here's what that looked like in practice. Let's take two big thinkers. Back in the 14th century, a brilliant writer like Petrarch might have his work read by, a few dozen other elites. That was a success. Now, fast forward 2 centuries into the age of print. A writer like Erasmus, he could reach thousands of readers all across Europe. An idea could finally have a mass audience.
And it wasn't just about spreading new ideas. The press created a kind of shared public library for all of Europe. By 1550, pretty much all the great classical works from ancient Greece and Rome were back in print and available. This meant scholars from London to Rome could finally read and debate the exact same sentence from the exact same text. It sparked this huge synchronized conversation across the entire continent. And as a little side effect, with standardized texts came the idea of authorship. You could now reliably quote someone or, steal their work, which gave birth to our modern idea of plagiarism.
But the impact didn't stop with the intellectual stuff. Nope, it went way deeper, right into the heart of culture. The printing press actually helped create new languages and, along with them, new national identities.
Now, this is a huge idea to wrap your head around, but by deciding which local dialects to print and sell, printers basically played kingmaker. They helped standardize languages, which in turn created these shared cultures, the very things you need to build a modern nation.
Think about it. Before print, if you were writing anything important, you wrote it in Latin. But printers quickly figured out they could sell a whole lot more books if they printed them in the vernacular. The languages people actually spoke every day.
So when they started mass-producing works by authors like Dante in Italian, Chaucer in English, and Martin Luther in German, they weren't just selling books. They were helping to build what it meant to be Italian, or English, or German. They were turning a messy collection of local dialects into a unified national language.
But maybe the most explosive consequence of them all happened in the world of faith. The printing press didn't just spread ideas, it became the very engine of the Protestant Reformation.
And it all boils down to this one simple but totally earth-shattering question. For centuries, the Bible was controlled by the church, interpreted by a select few for everyone else. So what happens when that book, the most powerful text in the Western world, is suddenly available for everyone to read for themselves?
Well, here's what happens. First, regular people get direct, personal access to Scripture. This leads right to step 2. They start to read it, think about it, and then challenge the church's official interpretations. And finally, reformers like Martin Luther could use the press like a weapon, making their critiques, like the famous 95 Theses, go viral across Europe in a matter of weeks, not years.
So when you get right down to it, the printing press was the essential technology, the key tool that made it possible to challenge centuries of established religious authority. It took the power of interpretation away from the institution and put it directly into the hands of the individual.
And when you step back and look at the whole picture, you can see how all these changes were tangled up together. It was an intellectual revolution, a cultural revolution, and a religious revolution, all happening at once. And all of that, of course, kicked off profound social and political shifts. I mean, think about the rise of literacy, which allowed political pamphlets to fly around, creating a public that was more informed and often way more rebellious. The seeds of modern politics were planted right there.
The printing press shaped its world for 500 years, and it leaves us with this really powerful question for today. What will our era's defining technologies, the internet, social media, AI, what will they shape in the next 50 years? Just like the press created new ways for people to connect and to argue, so do our platforms today. What revolution are we living through right now, and maybe we can't even fully see it yet?